You made it. Welcome back, everybody. So, it's SolidSol here, and I'm going to talk about the Lawbringer, basically the finished iteration of his kit. So these two images here, the devs said that whatever is not on there that has been changed on the testing grounds from Lawbringer, they are not keeping. So whatever is there right now currently is what they are keeping, okay? Still, that doesn't really answer every single question we have. We'll have to wait until Thursday when the rework actually comes out to see if what I am saying or what my qualms are about will be coming to fruition or not. But I'd say most of the things that I'm talking about this video will be correct. He's had two testing grounds. The first one was pretty crazy. They just want to test out some crazy stuff with hyper armor, tons of unblockables, all that crazy shenanigans. And then of course the second one, they toned down him significantly and made him feel much more viable and less annoying to deal with. Still a little bit of qualms that we had about the character, but I think it was overall a more positive experience at the end of the day. I will give Ubisoft props for making a ton of good changes overall with the Assassin's Guard reflexes, the nerfs to Magi, some buffs to Takiri, and buffs to Pirate as well. But, you know, there are times where you have to be critical and give them some critical, constructive criticism. I will not be dick riding these developers as they have made some serious, repeated mistakes over the past years. It feels a bit inconsistent, if you ask me. I am not complaining, I am simply giving constructive criticism and feedback because everybody needs this, myself included, and you've got to be able to take it well. People like to say that I'm complaining, or other YouTubers that complain in general, just to essentially make it seem like their points are invalid or pointless, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. People need to have pushback when they do the wrong things, especially when it's so simple to the average player. So moving on from that, I'd like to go over my thoughts about the Lawbringer rework, and basically I think that Lawbringer kind of got the Conqueror rework treatment. What do I mean by that? Well, simply put, these two characters, they don't have roll catchers at all, and these two characters both had two testing grounds and they did not know what to do with said character. So when people start dodge rolling away from them, you have no way to chase them and you're simply stuck there looking like a bozo. Would it be slightly difficult perchance by adding a roll catcher to the character? Sure. But of course, Ubisoft already had 2 tries, and maybe 3 tries, including the live version that's coming out. You have 3 tries, and everybody's been asking for a roll catcher for practically every single character. Why haven't you done it yet? That is my question. This is probably one of the most egregious things to not be able to utilize in team fights or in 1v2 situations. As soon as the other person rolls away from you, it's basically Joe over. Lawbringer cannot chase them down, and he's stuck not being able to do anything. The only time you can get your anti-ganks off is if they go for a parry and they miss it and you guard break them and you land some beefy damage. However, smart players will always find the perfect time to dodge roll away from Lawbringer's mix-ups and make it so that he's useless in those situations. I mean, if dodge rolling wasn't a thing, then a ton of mix-ups would actually be more viable. But that's not the world that we live in right now. The most simplest fix to this is have it so that you can dodge forward and use his Impale and decrease the range significantly, or just not even give him no displacements whatsoever and just make it so that it does 15 or 20 damage as an attack so he can go into his chain starter. I think that's the most simplest thing they could probably do, but they couldn't even manage that. And instead of putting resources into that specific roll catcher change, they went ahead and made new animations for Lawbringer, which nobody asked for, and it was nice, but they're not even keeping it anymore. They're actually getting rid of it, I believe. If I'm wrong here, please let me know. They said that everything that wasn't listed on the patch notes for Lawbringer, they weren't going to keep. So it just doesn't make sense to me, especially from a business perspective, on why you would waste certain resources and allocate them to something that doesn't need to be done. Yeah, it's nice that the animation was top tier, and you remember the Abomination animation that they first created, and they improved it significantly. Props to the animation team, but you're not going to be using it, so like, what's the point? And if you guys are, fantastic, but you could have just made it so Lawbringer get a new Impale animation for the roll catcher. I think this is just a simple thing, but of course we're dealing with the Ubisoft devs. There's a lot of back and forth that always happens with these balanced changes. It's happened with Conquer, and I knew it was gonna happen with Lawbringer as well, because they just don't know what to do with them because they don't play their game. If you played any character without a roll catch, you would know how painful your existence is in a 1v2 situation or just trying to catch people who run away from you. At the highest levels, it is aggravating. So with that point being made, I really think they fumbled and dropped the ball on this, and I think Lawbringer's rework is going to be scuffed in that regard. Everything else though for the character is already pretty solid. Almost everything is perfect, such as the zone continuing into his chain mix-ups. His new double tap on his heavy helps out for ganks and messes up with people's timings and get into his unblockable chain pressure much faster if you land a heavy attack. The triple lights being removed as well, and long arm being a little bit better. So the triple light chains, they are gone. I think that is okay. He didn't need that, but more importantly, I think he needed a light chain. He does have a 400 ms chain light on the top, but if they remove that, I'd be perfectly fine with that. You could just have 500 ms chains all around, as it could help him mix people up with a light attack or heavy attack if they decide to go to the parry. He does have a 400 ms chain light attack, which is the top guard, but if they made that 500 ms all around, he still has a decent mix up by going into a light or a light heavy in case people want to try to parry. He already has that enhanced light, so I think would help him a lot and tremendously. Now, is this going to be aggravating for the lower tiers of play where a 400 ms light chain exists? No, not necessarily, because one, it only comes from just one side. So if you block top, and if you always block top, there is no way in hell that thing is going to hit you, and it will just bounce off since it is not enhanced. The enhanced lights help you get into your mix-up so that you don't have to rely on your 500 ms bash consistently and all the time. Nobody is going to be pairing those 500 ms lights or the 400 ms lights consistently every single time. You're not fighting those types of players every single game. And the high level players who do play this game, they play it in team-based comps anyways. The duels do happen from time to time in these Dominion games, but it's all about team play, and you're going to be externaling literally everything in the game, so it doesn't matter if he gets 500 ms chain lights all around or just keep the 400 ms on top. What matters is that he has variety and different utilities with the different mix-ups that he can use with a light or heavy attack, because if it forces parries, then that's a good thing. Because of course, if you don't parry that, he gets to go into his unblockable chain heavy mix-up or go into his chain bash, which I'm pretty sure they will be trying to speed up eventually. So overall, having a light into heavy is a good change for low-level plays and higher tiers of plays. If we're not going to give these characters 3 chain lights, then we might as well remove Raider 3 chain lights and literally any other character that has 3 chain lights like Valkyrie as well, if we're just using that philosophy, which I don't think we should. 3 chain lights are good, and we should bring them back. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the Impale after light parry only. Now, JC said that this gives you more options for light parries and just parry or post in general.
We want to have Lawbringer keep his identity as a parry specialist and have a lot of options out of parries and be able to keep the pressure after parries. That's very, very important to us. And so by giving those things a little bit like more utility, a little bit more stuff there, it feels great. And it lets the hero actually really go into pressure. Because one of the big problems that Lawbringer had was, yeah, you're really good defensively, but offensively, you're not that good. It's kind of hard to get to where you want to be. So with these kind of changes, though, those slow changes really helps get into where you want to go. So that's great.
I'd like to ask my boy JC, what other options do you have as a Lawbringer when you get a heavy or light parry, my guy? As a specialist on parrying and having so many options, for a heavy parry, let me tell you, for heavy parry, you get the light riposte for 12 damage. That's all. That is all you get. Some characters have bashes. You can use a forward dodge bash and go into a light. Yes, but every other character has that at the same time. So for zone attack, every other character has a zone attack as well that he could use. For a light parry, you have Ad Mortem, which is the maximum amount of damage, probably 29 or 30 damage. That's the one you want to be using. The other one is an Impale. Whoop-de-freaking-do. An Impale for less damage, no stun, no stamina drain, and you can't even long arm afterwards. What's the point of that? You tell me. Unless they decided to revert that change, which I didn't hear them talk about that, where you could use an Impale on a light attack, a light parry, and go into a long arm right afterwards, which in Tested Grounds 2, you could not do that. And Tested Grounds 1, you could. I don't know what the deal is going to be. We don't know. They never said anything about that, and if I'm wrong, please let me know down in the comments section below. Sure, you get one more option for a light parry, Ad Mortem, or you can go into an Impale for severely amount of less damage and more stamina cost, and just not a preferred way of attacking and dealing damage. At least you could given him a side heavy unblockable heavy, which would be way more beneficial in teamfights, instead of him letting him commit to Ad Mortem, the top heavy every single time, which has no cleave in teamfights and is mainly only used in a 1v1 situation. A lot of people have been asking for the ability to make the side heavy unblockable actually utilize, so you can use it in teamfights and use it to cleave opponents externally. So realistically, there are no options for Lawbringer after every single parry. He has no more options. At least when he had a heavy parry, he could use an Impale and go into tons of damage, but even if you reduce the damage to maybe even 18 or 20 damage, people would still be fine with that. I personally would be fine with that because you gotta keep his animation, you could do the ledge potential, you could do the long arm, really good stuff. There's just so much inconsistencies in this game. I mean, just take a look at Warlord and Shaman. Those characters can get a ledge any single time they want for a guard break. A guard break, mind you, a guard break that takes little to no skill whatsoever. For Warlord, it's way more frequent simply due to because his bash is so fast, and a lot of people can't dodge that consistently, so people will try to pre-dodge, and Warlord will get them with a guard break. He has like the farthest throw distance, alright? Shaman also is another one contender for one of the best ledgers because her bash can be followed up after a throw, and she has a crazy throw distance for the size of that girl. And my gosh, you get ledged by them all the time. Not all the time, but frequently. And they haven't done anything about that. And why would they nerf a character that can ledge someone on a heavy parry? Heavy parry takes skill. Parrying takes skill in general. So why are you trying to punish players for actually parrying attacks? Doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense. And that is my rebuttal to JC after calling him a parry specialist now after the rework. But of course, you guys all know that the follow-up light attack that they have given him, which is only going to do about 12 damage. I don't think they said that they were going to increase it to 16, which is a bit unfortunate, but I mean, you know, it's Ubisoft, so it's going to be 12 damage, and that's quite frankly the only realistic option he gets after a heavy parry anymore. Before, you can go into an Impale and get a top heavy for the stun and the stamina drain, but now since they removed that, I don't think it would be that crazy anymore to keep the Impale on a heavy parry. What I think they need to specifically do is make it so that the Impale does not travel that far. Make it so that it travels the distance of maybe an Aphira left heavy attack that pushes and displaces them from that distance. Maybe not even that, but just a little bit. Impale does not need to be that powerful because Aphira, Jormungandr, Centurion, these characters have insane parry punishes already. Lawbringer loses all of his parry punishes. He loses all of it. You can get it on light parries, but the light parry punishes should always and will always be reserved for the maximum punish. Ad Mortem is the only attack you should be using when you get a light parry. There is no reason to use Impale unless you're going for ledges, and having the ledge opportunity being removed on the light attack just doesn't make any sense at all. The heavy attacks are what is being parried most in this game, not light attacks. So that is why reducing the range of the Impale would help significantly and still keep the character and the identity of this Lawbringer character that we all love and have been playing since the dawn of time. Unless they decide to keep the stun when going for an Impale on a light parry and keeping those properties, then I think it would be worth it instead of going for an Ad Mortem Mikus. But even so, the Ad Mortem, you could go into an unblockable or chain bash anyways afterwards, having chain pressure already. It's already a very powerful tool instead of just using the Impale, which takes a much longer period of time in 4v4, which is what they balance for. That is just going to waste so much time unless you're just ledging, and you can't even use long arm anymore after an Impale. Unless they changed that specifically, I don't know if they did, but if they didn't, well then that's basically a useless move that you can only use for neutral, for memes, or maybe a confirmed gank of sorts after a certain amount of hit stun. I don't know. It's just so slow, and you can't do anything from it from neutral. Can't even use it on your chain, such as Majayu could use his chain bash from that. At least people who would be able to notice if you throw a heavy attack, they would probably expect you to use a long arm afterwards. You could just confirm that with maybe another heavy attack or a light attack so they could parry it or just get a hit stun. But even so, there's no reason to use Impale at all. I bet you will not see any more Impale at all. Even though this was an unhealthy aspect of the character for the longest time, I think all they need to do was make a few adjustments to the kit so you could keep the animation and so you could keep using it on heavy parries, because heavy parries, you can get them a lot and there's more variety when you get heavy parries. There shouldn't be that much variety on light parries because it's always the maximum amount of damage. And one really important thing that I like to note is that Warmonger is quite a very similar character to Lawbringer when it comes to the light damage parry riposte, or the light attack parry riposte. Now Warmonger, usually if there is no wall nearby, you always want to go for the 27 damage top heavy, but in case you guys didn't know, the Impale, if there is a wall nearby, it deals 30 damage total. So that is the maximum amount for Warmonger, and it makes sense. So if there is a wall nearby, she has a great travel distance, you should go for the Impale, okay? Now that makes sense, but for Lawbringer, my guy, when you get a light parry, you get 24 damage for a light parry for a wall splat, and you can't even use long arm anymore. Like, what is even the point of that? Actually, I think it might be 26 because it should act as a chain heavy, but that's how the previous iteration of Testing Grounds 1 Lawbringer active. I don't remember, but anyways, it's not going to be above a light parry damage, I believe, because the light parry is going to be, ad mortem is going to be 29 damage total. So why would you go for anything less and go into a mix-up that, you know, you would just get from ad mortem, and that costs less stamina at the same time. Keep in mind, Warmonger also has incredible ledge potential with her Impale. Riddle me that, developers. Are you going to nerf Warmonger? Are you going to nerf Afira? Are you going to nerf Centurion? I keep saying Centurion like that because Metatron says it like that. Think, Ubisoft. Seriously, just think. Add the stun back, add the stamina drain back for that specific instance on light parries, because you should be rewarded significantly for doing that. Like, make the character interesting. Come on, guys. It's not hard to do. It's really not. So going back to the point of getting Impale on a light parry, if you keep the stun property, then you'd have the potential mix-up of going to a follow-up light and getting more damage overall and entering your mix-ups, because after the Impale, you can regain some of your stamina back, which would help maybe performing another light attack to finish off an enemy, or going into chain bash mix-up and all that good stuff. But without that, the Impale is practically a useless move that nobody will ever use. And that by itself is just bad balancing for the sake of utility while ruining the fun aspect of the character. This character is frankly just parry and unblockable now. There's nothing interesting about this character anymore. It's going to feel rewarding getting a light parry and going for a ledge with an Impale, as it always is, but it's going to be less frequent, and if you guys are okay with that, you know, it's understandable, but I can tell you most Lawbringer players want that Impale on heavy parry, and they want that damage reduced, and they want the Impale range reduced if we're still going to be able to keep that on heavy parries. Am I wrong here? Let me know down below if you guys have been playing Lawbringer. I know most Lawbringer players know that this has been unhealthy for a very long time, but I think they had it right on the first Testing Grounds iteration, where it only dealt 19 or 20 damage total on a heavy parry Impale. I just don't know why they didn't keep that, because it was a great addition to the character. They nerfed his damage, they nerfed the stun, they nerfed the stamina reduction, and I think that was perfect for the Impale. I think it was fine, and it still made him feel like Lawbringer. The only issue is that he couldn't long arm afterwards, and they should have kept that part in, but they just decided to skip that part entirely. See, the long arm was really useful, especially in 4v4, when you got a parry off a revenged opponent, or an opponent in general and your teammate was nearby, and after the Impale you could do a long arm and stall for even longer to waste the person's revenge, because you decide to parry someone in revenge, and that's a pretty risky thing, and you should be rewarded for it. High risk, high reward. During a gank, if you manage to get someone on a long arm after an Impale, you have a pin that will deal maximum amount of damage. There's no damage reduction on any of your two heavies from the teammate that you have and your heavy, so it deals a ton of damage. And just removing this just takes away so much utility from the character. Now you just have to land that long arm from neutral. Now I believe you can still use long arm in a light parry, but there's no reason to use that at all. Why would you do a 24 damage light parry when you can just go for a 29 damage? And I believe they changed his values to 29 instead of the 30, because 30 is a pretty darn high light damage punish. But of course, Lawbringer has been known for that for years. And of course, we know that Shinobi has the highest guard break damage of all time. I believe it's 28 for a, yeah, it's 28 for a guard break because the initial 24 damage from the guard break, and then he gets a follow-up for damage, which is ridiculously high. So I know how the character is already going to play. He's going to be a good character. He's going to be strong, probably be high A tier, might even be higher due to his hyper armor. They didn't touch his zone at all. It's still 700 MS. It's nice that it's a chain starter now, but for such a slow move, they need to add more properties to it. Even Shigoki's is 600 MS that has hyper armor startup. Warlord's zone is 600 MS with undodgeable properties. I mean, touch up on the zone, guys. I feel like this is something that needs to be said, but of course, you guys didn't even touch up on a roll catcher, which is plainly so obvious. All the comp players have said that they needed a roll catcher, and all the casual players and good players in general have been saying that for years. I think it would be really easy if you simply just asked one YouTuber, maybe just ask John Aligner. Like, he's a good player. Just ask him for the YouTuber, or even me, for goodness sakes, because I've been playing this game for 7 years. I think I know how to balance this game at least in a fun, objective way that can at least be used at the highest levels, and so the game can be less frustrating to play. And then ask one of the best players, like Beanie or whoever else out there that plays the game at a really high competitive level. Ask those two people, and have them find a good melting point, and we can figure out how to make the best character possible that's fun and can be utilized in competitive play as well. I really don't think I'd be asking for too much here, honestly. I don't think my ego would be shattered because my ideas wouldn't work simply because I didn't play the game. In reality, I think a lot of the devs don't have time to play a game that they're working on because these guys are working, I don't know, freaking 10, 12 hours a day, same as me. And at the end of the day, you're just freaking tired. You don't want to do anything else except for relax and play a game that's not super sweaty, because For Honor at its core is incredibly sweaty, and you have to be really skilled to actually maybe even enjoy the game and keep playing it, because if you're bad at it, you're gonna not want to play it. But I'm good at the game, so I keep wanting to play it. Even though I lose my games, I perform really well, and I have bad teammates that mess me up, but I'm still clutching out my games and getting my clips, and that's all that really matters. So the developers, I feel for, they've been doing a lot of good things, but I have to call them out when they're doing one of the dumbest things ever that I've ever seen in my entire life. And Lawbringer right now is just getting shafted. He's absolutely getting shafted, and they're not going to do any more tweaks to him for a while, I'm sure. So he's got a Conqueror side type of rework, and that really irks me, because Conqueror used to be one of my favorite characters as well. They didn't give him a roll catcher, they didn't do anything with his forward. His running a dodge attack, running dodge bash, which can be utilized with Tiandi and Jormungandr, but most characters who have gotten reworked or touched up upon have had their dodge attacks chain into their attacks or something like that. So maybe if Conqueror could do his bash running attack, he could go into maybe a light attack or a normal heavy or unblockable heavy mix-up, which would be pretty strong if I say so myself, but it wouldn't have like frame advantage or something like that. I don't know, that would be pretty cool, but it feels, you know, really lackluster compared to other reworks that we're getting right now, because Highlander's rework, it is top tier. It makes him very strong, and I mean, Lawbringer had some really good changes in the first iteration of the testing grounds. It just need to be tweaked down a little bit, but overall, I am not happy with these results, if I say so myself. What do you guys think about this? Am I overreacting? Because you can't spell overreacting without ovaries, and that's such a good joke. I love that joke. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of things we'll have to wait for. I want to see how he plays. I already know how he plays. I know how it's going to work out. Maybe there's some secret things that they didn't add and whatnot, but they did say that these two panels, if whatever changes that were on testing grounds that's not displayed there, they aren't going through. So we're going to keep the bash. We're going to remove the 3 chain lights, and the Impale, there's no long arm anymore, and the Impale is 1100 MS, so it's slow as heck. Can't get it on heavy parries anymore. What say you though? What do you think about the damage nerfs on his follow-up light attack riposte, which is only 12 damage? What do you think about the removal of 3 chain lights and the removal of the 2 chain lights into a heavy, and the hyper armor on the chain heavies, which is really nice? I think that's a really good change. And of course, the Impale nerf on only a light parry, which is disgusting since they didn't do anything else to his kit. And of course, no roll catcher. Those are my thoughts. It was mostly sort of like a rant video, but I did have a lot of critiques against these changes. Overall, these are decent changes and really good changes for the character to make him more strong, but you kind of removed all aspects of Lawbringer, and now he, quite frankly, literally will feel like Conqueror, where it's just unblockable after unblockable, with nothing really fancy to his kit. This isn't Lawbringer anymore, this is just another plain competitive character that will be viable in the high tiers, and that's not really a good thing in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching as always. Appreciate the support, and of course, more good stuff coming soon. Be sure to check out my Twitch where I stream For Honor and other games as well in the description. Bye bye. See you later.